The observation post on Kepler 442b had been unervingly quiet for 3 weeks. Mira Thorne stood at the perimeter fence watching twin suns sink behind jagged crystalline spires. The violet horizon looked beautiful enough to fool some into thinking nothing dangerous lived there. Mira knew better. Somewhere beyond those glittering ridges, Vraxian forward units were probing, testing, waiting for an opening. She felt the planet's hush like a held breath, the kind that comes right before anything can break. Behind her, the bright explosion of motion between guard towers snapped the moment's tension. 2 juvenile Kafari, Rocky and Tivi, came bounding across the compound. The Kafari were not your simple planet fauna. They were quadrupedal, wolf-sized, with obsidian fur threaded with bioluminescence, and 6 panoramic eyes that took in nearly everything at once. Mira had pushed for their training when the unit first landed. It had been a controversial idea. They're animals, Commander Hayes had said in the briefing, but Mira argued they were sentient, eager, and willing, and that their native senses could be leveraged without erasing their dignity. Now Rocky and Tivi froze the instant Mira produced a worn tennis ball, a small, defiant piece of earth she'd kept in her vest. That ball, once a comfort, had become a tool. She tossed it toward the training field. Both Kafari shot forward with kinetic grace. Tivi, the faster of the two, reached the ball first as usual. But Rocky broke from the routine. His bioluminescent patterns shifted to an urgent, dark purple, the Kafari danger signal. He veered away from competition and toward the tree-line, eyes tracking something Mira could not yet see. Mira's hand dropped to her sidearm. She issued the calm alert, used the hand cue she developed, and sent the command that felt ridiculous even speaking aloud. Fetch, bring alive. Rocky cocked his head and pulsed a familiar sequence she'd taught him when they'd trained together, a small, mutual language built of light and movement. Then both creatures melted into the crystalline forest like shadows that belonged to no human map. The compound came alive. Soldiers sprinted to positions. Hayes, who had doubted Mira's judgment, appeared beside her and watched the sky and rocks the way a man watches a wound he cannot yet treat. 15 minutes would stretch like an hour as questions multiplied. Had Mira misread them? Had she gambled the unit's safety on a pet trick? No one knew yet the answer. Only that the Kafari's instincts had changed the tone of that long, quiet watch point. 15 minutes of tension finally broke with a frantic surge of motion at the forest edge. Rocky and Tivi burst back through the crystalline trunks. Not with a small animal, not with a piece of gear, but with a stumbling, terrified Vraxian scout between them. The reptilian soldier's armor was damaged, its weapon absent, high-pitched distress calls tearing through the compound's air. The scene looked almost comical by strict military standards. 2 indigenous quadrupeds herding a hardened alien soldier like shepherds guiding a rescued sheep. But the effect was immediate and clinical. The Kafari's method was flawless and horrifying in its efficiency. They used nips and low clicks, precise pressure and shifting light displays, to box the scout into a straight corridor that led directly to Mira. The scout tried to bolt. The Kafari's instincts were better than any net or trap the unit could deploy. When they delivered the Vraxian at Mira's feet, they did so with markings of triumph. Their bioluminescent patterns flaring gold and scarlet, the Kafari equivalent of a soldier's chest swell. 30 human soldiers froze, then stared as Mira knelt to scratch them behind their auditory ridges. "Very good fetch," she said, voice tight with an emotion that was half pride, half astonishment at how quickly training and native instinct harmonized. Intelligence officers moved in. The scout, sullen and exhausted, could barely stay upright. Its armor bore the scars of a skirmish. Its cries suggested it had been cut off or trapped. For Mira and the outpost command, the captured soldier was concrete proof that Vraxian probes were indeed operating in the area, and that the Kafari could detect and corral them where humans could not. The intelligence gleaned from a single scout, patrol routes, the direction of forward units, the kind of damage sustained, would change the standing sense of vulnerability into tactical possibility. Commander Hayes' earlier skepticism crumbled into reluctant acceptance. He voiced what everyone was thinking. The Vraxi had misread the planet as pre-industrial and therefore harmless. They had not accounted for a species who, once given a reason to fight and a capacity to participate, would exceed expectations. The captured scout was not just an enemy soldier. It was a ripple that would reveal the Vraxian net. For Mira, the moment braided practical victory and moral clarity. The Kafari were not tools to be used. They were partners proving their worth on the harshest terms. The triumph of the scouts' capture had consequences that unfolded faster than anyone predicted. Intelligence officers extracted the scouts' information, and from that single prisoner the outpost learned the location of forward positions, patrol patterns, and weaknesses in Vraxian logistics. Reports streamed back to headquarters. Probes were localized, supply lines vulnerable, retrieval corridors predictable. The tactical map shifted. What had been a static listening post became the focal point of a small but decisive campaign to blunt the Vraxian advance. More important than raw data was the doctrine it inspired. Mira's training regimen moved from an experimental oddity to a formalized program. The Kafari, once dismissed as animals, were recognized as sentient defenders with unparalleled environmental adaptation. From training fields and quiet tosses of the tennis ball arose coordinated tactics, scent masking, synchronized herding of skirmishers into traps, early warning rotations that used the Kafari's six-side sweep to detect thermal and motion signatures human sensors missed. Mira and her squad taught them military cues that respected Kafari communication patterns. The Kafari taught humans how to move with the land, where rocks threw echoes and crystals hid footsteps. Within weeks, Rocky and Tivi's names circulated through the chain of command. Stories of fetch-style captures and precision herding spread like a folktale told around war room displays, giving birth to the idea of a Kafari tactical corps, a formal alliance of indigenous trackers and human soldiers. Recruitment and training accelerated across other settled regions of Kepler 442b. The Kafari were not conscripted, they volunteered, spurred by a clear stake in defending their world. What began as a skeptic's gambit had birthed a doctrine, a partnership code that combined human operational rigor with Kafari intuition and mobility. The Vraxian campaign found itself in unfamiliar terrain. Their probes, designed to exploit presumed technological gaps, now ran into animals that moved with strategy, creatures that could confine, herd, and communicate intent in a way no drone had accounted for. Tactical surprises rippled across front lines. Raids that once would have gotten away found themselves funneled into human lines by a species that knew the land like blood. The Kafari Tactical Corps didn't just level the playing field, it rewired it. Even as the Kafari Tactical Corps became a strategic weapon, the human moments that birthed it did not vanish. After a week of skirmishes, briefings, and long nights, Mira returned to the field with Rocky and Tivi at her side. The compound's pulse had changed from fearful anticipation to a new rhythm: respect, curiosity, and teamwork. Soldiers stopped by the training field to watch the Kafari practice herding and retrieval. Some left with dirt on their boots and a different understanding of what coalition looked like. There was a scene that captured the new era's soul. Mira, wearing the same worn tactical vest and carrying the same scuffed tennis ball, sat on a low rock and tossed the ball into the alien sunset. Rocky and Tivi exploded into motion, streaking across crystalline sands as their bioluminescence painted the dusk. It was a small, human gesture amid galactic conflict, a simple game that had become the language of trust. Mira smiled as they ran. She had not engineered a superweapon. She had helped the people find a reason to fight alongside them. Hayes' offhand observation that invading forces had failed to anticipate the fight a pre-industrial species would mount once given agency, echoed in the new doctrine. The Vraxian mistake was not technological hubris alone. It was underestimating respect and reciprocal purpose. The Kafari had not been weaponized by force. They were partners who chose to defend their territory once shown the cost of indifference. Together, humans and Kafari rewrote the tactical playbook. Simple things, a hand signal, a ball, a light pattern, multiplied into coordinated strategy that preserved life and tilted battlefields. The story ends on the soft note of companionship and hard note of consequence. Rocky and Tivi became legends, not trophies of war, but examples of a new ethic, that when alliances are built on respect, ingenuity follows. Mira watched her companions vanish into the shimmering dusk and realized that humanity had not arrived on the stars to stand alone. They had arrived to find allies in unexpected shapes. And sometimes the greatest victories start with something as uncomplicated as a game of fetch.